one of the other ideas that's being spoken of and speculated about back home, and it's a topic of discussion here at Davos as well, is a universal income scheme or a possible universal income scheme. Again, I'm not asking you whether we will see this being announced in the budget or not, but do you think that that's a good idea?
Well, I was a participant in the discussion. It was a very, very fascinating discussion. I think I've been a participant here in several discussions, but two major themes at Davos. One is about how do we create jobs as a consequence of the automation process that has come in, and that's a huge, huge challenge for the rest of the world. We are moving from low skill, low pay to high skill, high pay scenarios, and you need a restructuring of your education and your skilling systems back in India. It's not that there are no jobs, there are jobs, but they're high-skilled jobs, and you need to train your people for that. That's number one. And number two, as a consequence of the automation process that is taking place, the disruption that is going to take place, there's increasing amount of thinking that there is a need for a universal basic income. Now, in the Indian context, a universal basic income has to be examined in the context of the fact that we already have you have a rural employment guarantee scheme, which is being implemented but has huge leakages. Historically, it has had leakages. And you have a public distribution system which is implemented but again is riddled with corruption. And therefore, you need to think whether it's a better option to put money directly into the bank account of individuals, especially in the context of doing away with Manrega and the public distribution system, and looking at the kind of resources we'll generate through taxes and penalties. And definitely, I think that's one of the options before the government to think about, that it's a better option if we can do a direct benefit transfer straight into the hands of people. What it will do is to give a huge spur to rural demand, create rural consumption.
But are we ready to
that's
make the switch?
No.
And will the NREGS then have to go necessarily?
No. So,
what happens to the PDS, for instance?
These are options which were discussed here in that particular panel. I think the government needs a far greater level of discussion. I think it needs greater analysis. But that is one of the many options available for the government. And I think it's personally, I'm not speaking on behalf of the government, but my personal view is that government should definitely explore the option of a universal basic income to spur rural domestic demand. Also to create incomes directly into the hands of consumers, because after all, you need to give a thrust to better nutrition, you need to give a thrust to better education quality, you need to give a thrust to a huge amount of the vast number of people are going below the poverty line because of the huge expenditure on tertiary care. So universal basic income will take care of all those issues, but I think the issue needs an analysis and examination and spelling out different options. But I'm also, having said this, my view is that the universal basic income in the context of India needs to be tweaked in the context of the fact that giving grants, I'm against giving grants, so you need to give incomes which can then be used for productive purposes. So my view would be that you give it as a loan with no interest for a period of 3 years and ensure that this money is repaid and is then recycled, but the individual gets it without interest for a period of 3 to 4 years and is then used by him to form self-help groups and drive productive ventures in the economy.